This is the 8-hour workday with Rex Haymarket, where every crisis somehow becomes your bill and their bonus. Tonight, a convoy brings aid to Cuba, while half the English-speaking internet has a complete ideological nervous breakdown over who slept where. Washington is still pretending strangulation counts as statesmanship. The Iran war is wobbling between escalation and diplomacy, and Lebanon is still being chewed up. American airports are being held together by unpaid workers and patriotic denial, and the markets are cheering that maybe the apocalypse might be manageable. Our first story tonight is Cuba, where an international solidarity convoy has actually done the unfashionable thing of bringing material aid instead of just opinions. Reuters reported that a ship from Mexico arrived in Havana on Tuesday, carrying 14 tons of food, medicine, solar panels, and bicycles, supplementing another 6 tons of aid that activists had already delivered to hospitals. Reuters says the convoy involves nearly 300 organizations. AP separately reported that roughly 650 delegates from 33 countries and 120 organizations began arriving last week as part of the broader convoy effort. So naturally, instead of the political media asking, why does a nearby island need an international convoy to keep hospitals lit? The bigger fascination became, did Hasan wear expensive clothes? Was the hotel nice? Can we do 6,000 words of moral anguish about room service? The backlash was real and heavily amplified, focusing on Hasan Piker's hotel stay and optics rather than the blockade or the aid itself. In Dropsite's March 25 post, Ryan Grimm says flatly, "We are killing people. The United States is killing people." He challenged Newsmax on why the US gets to decide Cuba's future, while the blockade punishes civilians and rapidly collapses daily life. And the underlying material point is not actually trivial. A Reddit post summarized Grimm's argument. A private hotel stays lit while public hospitals go dark. US policy now allows fuel imports to Cuba's private sector while maintaining a hard squeeze on the state sector. Reuters confirmed that on March 25th, the US has shipped 30,000 barrels of fuel to the private sector this year, while the broader oil blockade continues to hammer public electricity. Publicly indexed snippets from Hasan Piker's X posts line up with that framing. One says Cuban doctors had to stop surgeries when generators ran out. Another earlier post defended the trip by saying they were going with journalists and artists. The bigger fact is, Cuba is deep in an energy emergency. ULRN reported Cuba had gone 3 months without a fuel shipment, hitting hospitals, schools, transport, and water systems. And this is the bit that makes the whole spectacle so rotten. The empire starves a country, then the commentariat treats the scandal as optics. That is not journalism, that is moral laundering for siege policy. Question: why is aid needed in the first place? The second story remains the war on Iran. Reuters reported that Pakistan passed a US proposal to Tehran, with Turkey floated as a possible venue. But Reuters also reported Wednesday that Iran's initial response was not positive, and the reply had already been relayed back through Pakistan. In plain English, the diplomatic channel exists, the bombing continues, and both sides are pretending those facts are not mutually insulting. So yes, technically there is diplomacy, in the same way there is technically ventilation in a burning building. Dropsite says the US proposal included sanctions relief, missile limits, and shipping access. Iranian officials publicly dismissed the idea. Tehran is publicly rejecting the American frame and insisting any agreement must come on terms Iran can live with after being bombed during negotiations. The governing class always wants applause for discovering negotiations the instant escalation stops polling well. Story 3 is that the war is still widening. Reuters reported Gulf Arab states told the UN that strikes on infrastructure posed an existential threat. In Lebanon, Israel's defense chief said the military intends to occupy southern Lebanon up to the Litani River as a security zone. Hezbollah says it will resist. Lebanon gets the usual treatment: dead civilians, shattered roads, destroyed bridges, and 1,000 think tank panels explaining why this was necessary. Security zone is one of those phrases that means someone powerful gets a press release and someone powerless gets their house removed from the map. Back in the United States, the Homeland Security funding standoff is doing to airports exactly what you'd expect: national malfunction. Reuters reported that 50,000 airport security officers have been going without pay. Waits at some airports have stretched to 4.5 hours. Reuters also reported immigration agents and Homeland Security investigations officers were deployed to 14 airports to help with screening support. Think about the moral geometry there. The workers the state calls essential are expected to function while missing rent, childcare, and groceries. Reuters reported TSA workers had received eviction notices and taken second jobs. That is not a labor shortage. That is policy violence. America loves essential workers in the same way a landlord loves a tenant who keeps paying while the ceiling caves in. The fifth story is the price tag. Reuters reported European stocks rose and oil prices fell Wednesday on hopes for US-Iran talks. Reuters said Brent fell to about $100.25 a barrel and WTI to $88.91, but the Strait of Hormuz remains under acute pressure. 1/5 of global crude passes through it. So the market story is not that everything is fine, it's that traders priced in the possibility that the ruling class might not set fire to the global fuel system quite as enthusiastically. And that anxiety is hitting the public. AP North polling found 59% of Americans say US military action against Iran has gone too far, while 45% say they are extremely worried about affording gas. When foreign policy reaches the petrol station, suddenly the pundit class remembers the public exists. Funny how a missile strike becomes complex geopolitics, but a price spike at the pump becomes an emergency of the highest democratic order. So that's the day. A convoy brings aid to Cuba, and the media asks whether the wrong people look too comfortable. Washington squeezes a country while private businesses get licensed fuel. Iran gets diplomacy by missile. Lebanon gets security. American airport workers get patriotic austerity. And the market gets a little thrill every time the end of the world sounds negotiable. This has been the 8-hour workday with Rex Haymarket, where the sacrifice is always reserved for people who do not own a refinery, a defense contractor, or a studio desk. Like, subscribe, and come back tomorrow. Because if they're going to turn every crisis into a bill, the least we can do is keep the receipt, mind the static, mind the spin, and mind who profits.